Welcome to the Star Chamber. I'm Ryan Swayze, a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel and the founder and president of the Walk the Talk Foundation, a nonprofit that advocates for and advises currently serving and former military service members going through the arduous journey of administrative processes and investigations in our government.
And I am Francesca Graham, a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel and the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Advisor for the Walk the Talk Foundation. For all our returning guests, welcome back. And for our new listeners, thank you for tuning in. Before we begin this week's topic, please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, check out our Walk the Talk Foundation website, and hit that donate button if you think we're doing a good job. Also, check out our newsletter, the DoD Times Redacted, on all the socials, including LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and Facebook. Links in the description. All right, Star Chamber listeners, let's get started. All right, welcome back, Star Chamber listeners, all 400 of you. Maybe
Plus.
500 at this point, at least.
By this point, we're in the thousands.
At least. So this episode, as we briefly referenced the previous episode, I have affectionately titled Bureaucratic Chihuahuas.
I'd like to interrupt you in your flow here, Cheska, just briefly though, and open the show with a deep apology to all Chihuahua owners out there for me having disparaged Chihuahuas and also made links Chihuahuas to the Department of Defense Inspector General system. I apologize to all Chihuahuas and their owners and relatives.
I feel like there's some sarcasm in there.
There is not. I am sincerely sorry.
Well,
because I'm really scared of them.
Really scared of the angry 1 pound or 2 pound Chihuahuas.
Yeah.
Like dogs. Okay.
And at least Chihuahuas have teeth, right? But not the DODIG.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Spicy start to the show.
Spicy start. All right. So we're going to talk about bureaucratic Chihuahuas or Lapdog, or more officially, the seminal document titled the Department of Defense Inspector General System Independent Watchdog turned Institution's Lapdog. So we published this in June of 2024. And I'd like, Ryan, if you could just give us an idea of why you thought about, because this was your idea, it was your conception. Why did you think that this document was needed?
When you read all the reports and essentially self-investigations of the Department of Defense's IG system, Inspector General system, it's all taken from one side, and that's the IG system itself. How well we're doing, how much ass we're kicking, all of that. And I said, we really need to tell the other side of the story first and foremost, because, and this is not just getting it out there in the ether to tell, this is to inform lawmakers of what's really happening, at least from the perspective of the consumer / customer / client side, i.e. complainants and subjects, and paint the other half of the picture, so to speak, on how things are really playing out in the field, and to show there is a significant lack of trust in the IG system from service members and from those in the Department of Defense.
And not just the IG system itself, but the administrative system writ large.
Yeah.
Because I remember that was one of the big things that as we were working on this document that you and I both came closer to realizing, which is that you have the IG system, and the IG system is in support of this larger administrative system, which can punish you, as we've talked about. We're going to talk about in future episodes. Punish you with up to an other than honorable discharge, completely non-transparently, no due
Hmm.
process, no procedural law, no right
Laws
to speak.
schmaws, baby.
La
Pew pew.
schmoz.
Wild West. Pew
La
pew.
schmoz. And we haven't even started talking about the National Guard yet. Now that is the Wild Wild
Oh
West.
boy.
Future episode, teaser, maybe 10 from now, but it's coming. It's gonna
That
be
is gonna
so
be a
good.
good one.
Yeah. So we decided, okay, or excuse me, you decided, all right, so we hear from the IG side, which really it's not even the IG side, it's the senior leadership side. It's who is the commander side of the story. It's not the subject, it's not the whistleblower side of the story. And
Right.
we decided we wanted to tell that story.
Yeah.
So, what does it actually say? And you don't have to get quite into the themes and our remedies at this point, but just broadly, what's the overarching message that we gave to Congress, we gave to the DODIG themselves, the
That
service
was a good one.
IGs,
Yeah.
yep, and that we gave to the public.
Yeah, the overarching theme is that there is a significant trust deficit from the department's members vis-a-vis the system. And it's due to a lot of things you kind of touched on already. It's lack of transparency, lack of due process, undertrained or poorly trained investigators, languishing investigations that go on forever. Just essentially, at the end of the day, the message is that the Inspector General system is not what it says it is. It purports itself to be an independent mechanism by which a person can seek redress for having seen or witnessed or been a victim of wrongdoing, and it just doesn't do that.
I think one of the more salient, is that the right word? I'm not sure.
Yes,
Salient
yes.
examples of that was several months ago when the Secretary of Defense was taken ill and was in Walter Reed for 2 weeks, I think it was.
Mm, we may
And
never know.
we may never know, did not notify Congress. And who knows if he notified the president? I don't know. I don't actually remember that part. And for those of you who wonder why this is a big deal, the Secretary of Defense is one of the few people who has the keys to the nuclear codes. And
Hmm.
so that's kind of a big deal from a
Hmm.
strategic national
Yeah,
defense perspective.
something.
Yep,
Hmm.
something. And there were several members of Congress who were a little bit upset about this lack of notification of the SecDef's whereabouts. And so the DODIG commissioned a inspection to see whether or not the Secretary of Defense was in the
No
wrong,
spoilers.
was in the wrong for not notifying Congress, or I don't think he notified the president either, if I remember correctly, where he
Hmm.
was and that he was under anesthesia and he was not doing well. Poor guy. I hope he recovers.
Yeah, of course.
Right. And the DODIG's finding was that everything's okay. The only issue is that we were missing an SOP. And we're just going to get that SOP put together. Don't worry about anything else.
What?
What? What? Yeah, yeah, everything's okay. It's just an SOP. If we had that SOP, all of the other leadership decisions would have happened if we had this SOP. And what we mean by SOP, specifically within the military, is standard operating procedure, which could be something as simple as typically, how do you change the oil in a vehicle? Not
Mhm.
necessarily what you would expect you need for the Secretary of Defense to notify Congress or the president that he is incapacitated and incapable of using the nuclear codes to defend our nation from nuclear attack. You would think
Yeah,
that would not be needed.
yeah, one step SOP, huh? Follow the law. Check.
Check. La schmaz. No big deal.
Man, if I only could see everyone's shocked face out there in podcast land right
Right.
now.
Right.
What?
Exactly. Okay, so with that bit of humor, not really
Mm.
humorous at all.
Mm.
Nuclear codes, no big deal.
Yeah.
So we developed 6 major themes that we saw as we were putting together, we were looking at the data, and I don't think we mentioned, so the data for this study is approximately 400 different one-on-one interviews and advisement that Ryan has done, plus I have done since January 2022 when the foundation started, plus 40 different separate case studies of people, 40 different people currently serving former military who were brave enough to tell their story
Mm-hmm.
so that members of Congress, DODIG, the general public could see what's happening from this other side. I would say it's more like the other 90%, not the other 50%
True.
of, yeah. So what were some of the themes that we pulled out from these 400 interviews, 40 case studies, etc.?
Yeah, here they are. First and foremost was a lack of due process and transparency. So the process is very opaque. Investigators don't have to tell you what's going on. At the end of it, they say, okay, unsubstantiated. And if you want to find out more, you can, through the Freedom of Information Act, get your report heavily redacted 2 years later. And you're like, this is worthless.
Or
So it's that,
substantiated.
or substantiated, who knows?
Yeah.
There is that 2% out there who have substantiated reprisals. That's a fact. So it's just very opaque. And then in the report of Lapdog, we compare and contrast the process of this administrative investigation to things like the Sixth Amendment in a criminal trial, in which there's discovery and trial of jury by peers and expeditious hearing, etc. And then when we contrast that, you see that these processes follow nothing of the sort.
Mm-hmm.
And there's very, very few checks and balances on the whole process, especially as it pertains to individual cases. And there are very, very, very few circumstances by which you could appeal. So it's just the Wild West, essentially. So that was theme one. Theme two, and this is arguably the biggest, perhaps, is conflicts of interest due to inspectors general and command-appointed investigating officers. And we expanded the report to go beyond just the IG system, but any investigating officer in this administrative system who could be some rando. We'll talk to talk to that more in depth.
We'll talk to one of the randos a little later.
Yeah, we'll talk. Yeah.
Future episode.
I like it. It's conflict of interest when your quote unquote independent investigating entity is subordinate to the commander of the entity that is carrying out or allowing the wrongdoing to happen, right? That's pretty basic, I think. Not rocket surgery.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say just like the DODIG doing the investigation on his boss,
Of its boss.
the SecDef. SecDef, did you do anything wrong? No. There's no conflict of interest there. None.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Truly independent.
Hmm.
Theme three, inadequate training. And Jessica, you see this. You saw it in your case. I saw it in my case. We see it in the cases we advise on. The quality of investigative work, let's just say there is a wide spectrum
It's
there.
trash. It's trash.
It's mostly trash. It is pick and choose and use opinions and predict the future was even the case in my investigation. Opine about random stuff, disregard corroborating evidence and witness statements. It is trash. You're right. Theme four, lack of timelines, lack of timeliness in investigations. Investigations can go on for decades. There is no statutory mandate for the closure of an investigation. I think that's ludicrous. And that really does wear on a person psychologically, which is why theme five is there is a inextricable link to the military suicide and mental health crisis. Because you're told it's your job to report a wrong. You're told you'll be protected if you do so, and then neither happen. And so when you go to report that, you're put into this 2 to 4 year ringer, purgatory, which you've got to relive events every day, and especially relive events when you're questioned again by the fourth investigator who just took on the case and has no wherewithal, even though it's been open for 18 months. And that's trauma inducing.
And I was going to say that's for our subjects as well. So your subjects of your
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, your subjects of your investigation, which many whistleblowers become subjects of an investigation. Hint, hint, that's one of the
Hmm.
key aspects of
Hmm.
reprisal.
Hmm. Hmm.
So your subjects of your investigation who, oh, I don't know, maybe their investigation goes on for a year, even though they proved that, I don't know, the events didn't happen within 3 months, but the investigation still goes on for a year, so you can't move, you can't PCS, you can't get awards, you can't go to schools, you don't get hired for jobs. None of that.
Hmm.
I mean, not that
Hmm.
I'm speaking from personal experience at all in any of
Mm-mm. The Army
that.
flag,
The Army flag.
greatest invention ever, the flag.
That's pretty
My
awesome.
God.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So yeah, so for your subjects of investigations, because we never want to forget them as well. It's
True.
the emotional trauma is really, really quite intense because you just don't know if all of a sudden, without any sort of control in your life, if your last 20 something years or 10 years or 14 years or 7 years is just going to go up in smoke.
Married that with the moral injury
Hmm.
that you suffer. I did a TV interview a few months ago as part of the Guarding the Guardsman series at Las Vegas TV channel 13. And in that, I said, you devote your entire adult life to the service of an institution that says it's going to protect you when you report a wrong, says it's your duty to do so, and then it doesn't. That is moral injury. That betrayal is moral injury defined. And it's hard to articulate and quantify in a report what that does to a person, but it shatters them. And the only quantifiable thing you can show nowadays for it is our decrease in recruiting and especially decrease in the number of people who have served who are recommending service to the children. I think there's an inextricable link there.
Well, and something else that you covered in one of my favorite podcasts that you did months ago, I think in December, which was the Military Culture Shift podcast with Corey
Yeah, it's a great
Weathers.
one.
That was
Yeah,
an awesome podcast.
she's amazing.
Yeah, she's incredible. And one of the things, the ideas that you covered, so it's not just the moral injury, I would argue it's not just the moral injury from your leadership betraying you. It's also the moral injury from all of a sudden realizing that your battle buddies, your peers, your even your supervisors or other people
Mm,
are afraid to
yes,
put their name on a character statement or a sworn statement saying Ryan Swayze is a good person or Francesca
yes,
Graham is a good person. And they have their reasons for doing that because they're scared that the Eye of Sauron is going to turn on them,
yes.
right?
But that is difficult to swallow when
It is,
you
yeah.
watch people cower who were your wingmen, your battle buddies, what have you, and because the heat's on and they have something to lose, they don't raise their head up for fear of it getting lopped off. That really adds to the moral injury. You're absolutely right.
It's incredibly isolating. And it is hard because the military culture is so wrapped up in that you never leave a fallen comrade. You're always there. You're checking on your buddy, you're checking on your buddy. And then you either make a complaint and you don't become a subject of investigation, or you're a subject of investigation, and all of a sudden you are isolated from the top, isolated from the sides, and isolated from the bottom. I mean, you're completely isolated, and it is so lonely.
The best quote I heard during that whole process that I went through that we talked to in the last episode was every American service member is prepared to give their life for their
Hmm.
country. Very few are prepared to give their career.
Yep.
And that's why it's has such an impact on mental health and the suicide crisis of our department. And the sixth theme that we highlighted is normalization of deviance. And this is a little technical, but it basically says if an organization is willing to turn a blind eye to even minor infractions or circumventions of rules and regulations, that begins them on a slippery slope. And it comes from the NASA study after the Challenger explosion. But a banal example we can cite is in Title 10, there's a requirement for the IG to notify a complainant for reprisal investigation every 180 days of the status. And that rule is frequently blown off. And yeah, it doesn't have an impact on the case normally, but it is in the law. It's in Title 10. And so if an inspector general is willing to scoff that, what else are they willing to scoff? And that's when you have this normalization of deviance. And so those were the 6 themes that we highlighted, which were lack of due process and transparency, conflict of interest from IGs, inadequate training of inspectors and investigators, lack of timelines and timeliness, link to the military suicide and mental health crisis, and normalization of deviance.
So those are our 6 themes. What are our remedies? So for all the congressional watchers out there, we did not give them 6 remedies because that would be too much legislation, I'm sure. So, so, so instead, we tailored it down to only 4 remedies. Some of what I just said is slightly tongue-in-cheek because each of the 4 remedies is so layered with
Yes.
legislative changes. It's a little bit insane.
It's
So
daunting for sure because
very.
the first fix is the creation of an independent office. And that is the big enchilada.
Mhm.
That is, we remove this system from as many conflicts of interest as we can. We make it separate so that investigators, inspectors don't feel pressured to have to choose between their loyalty to the truth, justice, due process, and loyalty to the chain of command, career preservation, etc. That's the ultimate aim. Of that, and beyond that, more accurately, we ask for increased oversight and accountability, which really doesn't exist right now in truth. Increased and improved training for investigators, especially, and of course, mandatory timelines for investigations. Those are the 4 asks. Some are bigger than others. Some are more daunting to congressional members and committees than others. But in order to achieve the end state, which is a truly independent investigative entity with which a person can go and be confident that their complaint will be looked into and also be confident that they won't be retaliated against, it has to be removed from as many influences from the department as possible.
And something I just want to make sure that we're perfectly clear about. We are not saying create a new IG office and leave the old IG office in place.
Right.
We are not saying that. We are saying
No.
no. So if the Department of Defense is a pie and the IG function, including the DoD IG, the services and the command appointed investigator, if that function is a slice of that pie, that slice is getting pulled out, stuck into a Ziploc bag, and crushed on a plate.
Yeah.
Happy Thanksgiving, people.
Yeah.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, I do like pie.
You do like pie. So I just want to make that clear because that was some questions. That was a question we were asked. I've been asked a couple
Yeah.
times when I've
Yeah, where
been
the people come from, where the money.
right. And then, and then also we know some of our congressional members, they're opposed to creation of additional offices without killing an office. So we say kill it, stab it,
Yep.
stab that Chihuahua, but not
These
really.
are, of course, the staffers who didn't just tell us to write the legislation ourselves.
But we're doing that though. We got that. We got you, staffers.
Yeah,
We
we got
are
you staffers.
we are writing.
What do
I
my tax dollars go to again? Oh, never mind. Sidebar.
sidebar. So, but yeah, so that is Lapdog. That is the Chihuahua. that supports the
Mhm.
bureaucracy of
Links
the
in the description. Download it.
absolutely. And I do want to give a shout out to, even though this report did not address the Coast Guard, from our
Mm,
experience with recent clients, I think you would agree with me, Ryan, that the observations that we have in here relevant to the Department of Defense are also relevant to the Coast Guard.
they are one and the same, it appears. It's same church, different pew in the Department of Homeland Security, as far as we can see and as far as our clients are seeing.
Exactly. Exactly. So, links in the description, just like Ryan said. And for our next episode, ding, 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 we're
Mm.
going to somewhat similar. So you might have picked up some of the themes from this particular episode and previous ones. This one is going to talk about this phenomenon or phenomenology called not me. Not me, people. Not me.
Don't look at me for answers or leadership.
It's gonna be
Not
great.
me.
It's gonna be great.
It's going to be awesome.
All right. I hope everyone has a great week.
Bye.
Bye. Well, that's it for this week's topic. We really appreciate you tuning in. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and check out our foundation website at walkthetalkfoundation.org.
And feel free to reach out and give us feedback. You can get a hold of us via Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and our foundation's website. Details in the description section. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next episode.